All right, y'all. This is, I think, one of the most important videos you're going to watch in whatever program you're doing. Every single client of mine, I talk about this with to a greater or lesser degree, and this is literally the foundation behind why we started HyperFit. So the law of gift, right? So this is something we didn't invent, first of all. But it started, I was first introduced to this when I was in my undergrad. So I did my undergrad in theology and philosophy, and then my master's in biblical theology before I started getting into fitness and nutrition. I was an athlete my whole life, but before I was like a certified personal trainer, nutrition coach, and all these things. And so the law of gift, we get it from Pope St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body, and he gets it from Gaudium et Spes from the Second Vatican Council. In this quote of, from Gaudium et Spes, it says, "Man, who is the only creature God willed for his own sake, cannot ever find himself except through a sincere gift of self." Right? So this is something first off, it's a Vatican Council document, so it's a Catholic document. This is kind of like a dogmatic, reality is that you're searching for something. What are you searching for? You're searching for yourself. You're searching for God. You're never going to find it until you learn to give of yourself. But here's the reality here. And this is where kind of our company comes in. You can't give what you don't have. Right? You can't. If we can't find ourselves, we can't be in union with Christ unless we learn to give of ourselves like he did on the cross. That's the goal. But we can't do that if we have nothing to give. Right? So if you can't give what you don't have. And so this is why historically asceticism is such a big deal in the church, right? And this is essentially what we're doing this is like modern asceticism, right? Working out's like the modern asceticism. For the last 2,000 years, lifting weights, working out wasn't really a thing because, people lived really hard lives and they did manual labor mostly. And they, if they were soldiers, they would train and all these things, right? So, and they're farmers, they would work the fields. But now in our modern society, we have less opportunities to exert ourselves physically, right? And so this law of gift, man only finds himself through a sincere gift of self. Yet we can't give what we don't have. And so by focusing on exercise, by mentally forcing ourselves to do something that our bodies don't want to do, and by focusing on nutrition, eating things that maybe are less palatable but more nutrient dense, maybe. But hopefully, like you're eating like yummy nutrient dense foods. Hopefully, these things, by striving for self mastery, more and more we do this, the longer we do this, the more we have this self mastery, the more we can give to our family, friends, spouse, co-workers, whatever the case may be, whatever your vocational state is. And so this is the law of gift. Man finds himself through a sincere gift of self. You can't give what you don't have. And this was really brought home to me, after my reversion. I had my reversion when I was 19. And, after a couple of years of just partying, drinking, and just doing all the stereotypical awful college stuff, right? I was home for the summer and I had my reversion. I encountered Christ. I realized that God is real and Jesus is real and I should live for him, right? And I was never an atheist or anything like that. I was a Catholic. I was sacramentalized. I was just never evangelized. I never let my faith affect how I lived, right? Affect my words and actions and thoughts. So after my reversion, I was still addicted to pornography, to masturbation, and all of these different things, all these different carnal pleasures, to drinking alcohol, to eating whatever I wanted to. And I didn't want to do that, right? I wanted to break these vices that shackled me. So first off, I went to confession with a priest I'd known for like a decade, and praise God for him. We made an appointment. It was one of those really long, brutally long confessions. And, so it's one of those things where I went to confession, received the grace of the sacrament, was reunited with Christ. I was in a state of grace for the first time in, years, right? Years. But I realized I needed to do something very tangible and practical as well. And so back in the day, there was these little workout DVDs. They're called Insanity. Don't ever do Insanity, by the way. It's not sustainable and it's not terribly good for you. But anyway, me and a couple of friends did it. And it's hard. It's a really hard workout. You're drenched in sweat, you're dying, right? But I did it for a couple reasons. And my first thought was, if I can mentally force my body to do this thing it doesn't want to do consistently, 4 or 5 days a week, however many it was, then on those moments where I'm tempted to, my body wants something, I can mentally stop it from doing something it wants to do, right? So it goes hand in glove. If I can mentally force my body to do this thing, then I can mentally stop my body from doing this thing, all with the grace of God, obviously. And so we did the workouts, but then even while I was doing the workouts, I didn't really understand the whole offer it up thing yet. I was a baby Catholic, didn't really understand theology or anything like that. But what I would say, I say a little prayer in my head, like, Lord, I do this, like, so I'm a better husband, I'm a better father one day. So I was kind of offering up for my future spouse and future kids. And by doing that, by just doing these brutally hard workouts, by kind of doing these ascetical practice, right? I praise God, I stopped falling into all these temptations and these vices. And, a couple months later, I was a missionary with Net Canada for a couple years. Praise God, like, it's just by doing that and by, keeping working out kind of a part of my lifestyle. Since then, I've come to this realization, and I didn't invent it, like I said, but it's something that we've been doing in the church for thousands of years, namely these physical ascetical practices. Another way that you can call this, and St. John of the Cross calls it, is active purgation, right? So basically there's passive purgation and active purgation. So active purgations are the things that we intentionally choose to do in order to purge ourselves of vices, sinful habits, what have you. Passive are the things that, like, God does, like, in our lives that we don't choose, and they tend to be more painful. So these active purgation, these ascetical practices, and they used to be things like bread and water fast, and you can still do bread and water fast. If you're working out really hard, don't do it too often. We can talk about that. Text me or something. But yeah, bread and water fast, abstaining from meat, whatever the case may be, sleeping on the ground, shaving your head, or whatever the ascetical practice that you've heard of, that Catholics have done throughout the past 2,000 years. Surviving off the Eucharist. I'm not saying that. Those are extreme cases. That's dangerous. But grace is real, and saints have survived doing it. Anyway, that's an aside. But yeah, finding these bodily ways to conquer ourselves with the grace of God, in order that we may give of ourselves to others. So no matter what program you're doing, this is why we do it, right? Yes, we have very specific maybe body recompositional goals. Maybe you're trying to lose body fat, gain muscle mass, body recomp. Maybe you're just trying to gain confidence in what you're doing. Whatever the case may be, we all have our individual whys. But ultimately, hopefully your foundational why is whatever it is you're doing it so that you may be a better gift of self to those you love and serve, right? If you need to lose weight because medically speaking you are obese or overweight, and you need to be in a lower body fat percentage, medically speaking, because just based on data, if we're in a healthy weight range, we can function better when we're older. It's less risk of disease and all these things. So that way we can give of ourselves for longer, for easier. Maybe you're a parent and you're just exhausted all the time because your kids are dragging you down, and you have too much body fat percentage, so you're working out to have more energy for your kids. Or maybe you're like me when I started. I was a super scrawny guy, and I'm still not exactly huge. But I was super scrawny, and it bugged me. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to be a strong dad and husband, and all these things. So I started working out to gain strength, so I can play with my kids for as long, and to not be just that scrawny guy, right? And also for discipline, right? And maybe you're somewhere in between, and maybe you're doing this because you've never worked out before, and you're trying to learn how so you can take care of yourself. No matter what it is, ultimately, man finds himself through a sincere gift of self. Hard stop. We're striving to imitate Christ crucified, right? Christ on the cross, who gave of himself completely for us. That's the goal. Our salvation is cruciform in shape. It's the shape of Christ on the cross, and we have to imitate that. But once again, we can't give what we don't have. So meditate on this, right? Like think about this, chew through this. If you've never read, Theology of the Body, Man and Woman He Created Them, start reading and start diving deeper into it. And not just like the, books written about theology of the body, even though those are great. Read those too. Like dive into the actual text, Man and Woman He Created Them. Like dive into it. Let's grow not only physically but mentally as well. It's not an easy read, but doesn't mean we should be scared of it or avoid it. And there's tons of good books and all these things. And so strive to be a gift of self to others. Strive to give of yourself. And hopefully whatever program you're doing, do it consistently and do it knowing that God is calling you to this to master yourself, to conquer yourself, or at least to begin the journey. We're not all perfect, right? Just because, Vibe and I have been doing this for a while, and the coaches have been working for us doing it for a while. We're not perfect. We're still sinners. But we know by continuing along this path with the grace of God, we can give of ourselves more completely to others. So pray about this. Let me know if you have any questions. Adios, y'all.